Hello geographers, and welcome to another lesson in the Changing China unit. In this lesson we hope to answer this question: what is the Belt and Road Initiative? So we're going to be looking at the importance of the BRI, as it's also known, as well as potential benefits to China and other countries, as well as the concerns that are currently being voiced. Now this lesson is number 6 in our journey through the unit Changing China. It links back to some of the work that we've done about the economy last lesson and also makes some links to the population changes that we've already studied. So I'd like you to get yourself a pen, a paper and a ruler and copy down today's date and title into your exercise book. Make sure you underline your title and your date with a ruler and then get started on the following quiz. So all you need to do is read each of the questions very carefully and then write your answer in your notes. In a moment, we'll go through the answers. So pause the video now to give yourself a chance to do that. Okay, so let's go through these answers then. You might want to use a different colour pen to mark your own work. So question A, what is the population of China approximately? And it's around 1.4 billion people. B, the People's Republic of China is run by a democratically elected political party. True or false? This is, of course, false. It's run by the Communist Party and it does not allow voting. C, name the Chinese leader responsible for initiating economic reforms, moving China away from its closed-door trade policy. So if you remember last lesson, we looked a lot at the leader Deng Xiaoping. He very much kept the communist political regime running, but he also encouraged a capitalist economic policy. He opened up China to trade with other countries, and that's when we begin to see China take on the role of the workshop of the world and really did focus on the manufacturing industries. D, what was the name given to locations that were allowed to encourage foreign investment and saw many small businesses set up? This was pivotal. The special economic zones were the areas that were allowed to encourage such investment and were allowed for businesses to operate without direct control from the government. E, China's share of world GDP is about 18%. This is about true. China is the world's largest economy. It's the largest exporter of goods and it's the workshop of the world. In other words, it's a manufacturing hub. So I'm going to ask you to think about the answers that you've collected there, because obviously it links very much back to the work we did last lesson. And then have a look at this task. Now, if you're able to work with somebody else, even better, because you can discuss this with them and get their ideas. But if not, just think it through in your head and jot down a couple of ideas. So think about what you consider to be the top 5 reasons for China becoming the world's largest economy. So really think back to last lesson and how China was able to get rich, but also consider the questions we've just been through, because that will give you some hints about the main reason why China is able to have the largest world economy. So take a moment to write down some of your ideas. So I wonder which ones you've considered to be most important. Did you consider the idea of population? The very fact that China's got such a high population not only means that it's got a huge workforce that's able to operate in these factories and produce all of the products, they're now increasingly becoming a market for themselves. So they have a huge market to sell to as well. The Communist Party, although many may disagree with how it operates, is incredibly efficient at getting things done and getting them done quickly. And so that's been one of the reasons why they were able to progress and economically develop so quickly. The other thing you might have mentioned is the influence of their leader, Deng Xiaoping, and how much he did to change the economy and orientate themselves to be a country that could actually trade with other countries, whereas previously they weren't able to do that. Or maybe you mentioned about the special economic zones and how they were pivotal in ensuring that inward investment would come and therefore make use of the abundance of workers in China. So there's a whole variety of reasons why China has now got such a large economy. China now has a really high level of wealth, but it is concentrated in very specific areas, notably along the coast and also in its major cities. So to try and spread the wealth a bit more equitably across the country, it's begun to turn to a project known as the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, this is a project that was actually announced back in 2013, but it's so big they're expecting it to take decades to really get to its completion. So I'd like you to spend some time in a moment really finding out more about the BRI. The first thing you'll need to do is to have a watch of this video clip. It's brilliant. It's a really good summary of exactly what the BRI actually is. It looks at the benefits, not just to China, but to other countries, and also some of the concerns. You can then supplement your viewing of that by reading through the double-sided information sheet that hopefully your teacher has provided for you. Once you've done that, you might want to consider what the pros and cons of the BRI actually are. When you've watched the video and you've had a good read through that information sheet, I've got some questions for you. So pause the video now and work through the information first of all.
You might find this hard to imagine, but for years, China...
Okay, so using what you've just watched, the information sheet you've also had a read through, and also an atlas, you're going to try and work through the following questions. So firstly, in your own words, write down what you think the BRI actually is. And remember, it's a little bit confusing, so make sure you note down what is meant by the belt element and the road element of the BRI. Secondly, using the map on the information sheet and an atlas, or perhaps you've got access to another screen so that you can see a world map, identify 5 of the countries that will be on the belt routes and 5 countries that will be on the road routes. Suggest how these countries will benefit from being part of the BRI. Thirdly, how do you think China is able to afford the large-scale investment required? So think back to last lesson and its economy. Number 4, what benefits will China expect from the BRI? So think specifically about China. Why would they want to put this project in place? And then lastly, why is it that some countries are concerned about the BRI? So pause your video and have a go at answering those 5 questions. Okay, so let's go through your answers to those questions. Now, number 1, it was asking you to write your own definition or understanding of what the BRI is. So I imagine it's going to be a little different to what you see on the screen, but this will just help to make sure that we're on the right lines. So the BRI is effectively a network of roads, railways, pipelines and ports designed to connect China with areas all around the world. And interestingly, the road element refers to the shipping routes, whereas the belt element refers to the on-land route. So that could be actual roads or railways and pipelines. Number 2 then, a bit tricky to do the answers to this question because actually the BRI is linking 147 different countries. But some of the belt countries actually include Russia, Mongolia, Iran, Turkey, India and Bangladesh, while the road countries could well be Indonesia, Cambodia, Somalia, Egypt, Italy and Greece. So a whole variety of answers that you might have there because you've got 147 to choose from. The countries themselves are likely to benefit from large-scale infrastructure projects that they might not otherwise have been able to afford. Okay, I've just spotted a spelling mistake, so I'm just going to amend that in just a moment. So the economy has basically grown very rapidly in China, largely because of the reforms that were implemented by Deng Xiaoping that we saw last lesson. Now, because of those economic and social changes, The manufacturing industry has massively grown in China, and this is the key area where they've been able to get a lot of money earned, and it's that they wish to invest around the world through the BRI. The main benefits for China then will include opening up and creating new markets for their goods and technologies. It will allow China the opportunity to invest the money it's earned from manufacturing and will create further jobs for Chinese workers. Furthermore, it will help to develop Western China, an area that's previously been isolated and unable to reap the rewards of the country's rapid development. So this is absolutely pivotal. The main reason that the BRI exists really is to try and distribute that wealth. If you remember last lesson, you had a look at the map showing the difference between the rural areas and the urban areas in terms of income, and there is quite a huge disparity between the two. So the BRI really hopes to try and connect the western parts of China to the rest of the country to try and ensure that they can also develop economically. The last question then refers to the concerns that are being voiced by various countries. India is a little bit nervous about China's attempts to gain strategic control, particularly in areas like Sri Lanka. Leaders in Nigeria and Ethiopia are also concerned that the Chinese investment is just another form of modern-day colonialism, and they're worried that a lot of the jobs are not going to local people and that China is potentially exploiting their natural resources. So to them it harks back to the days of empire. So by now you've hopefully gathered quite a lot of information about the Belt and Road Initiative. So what I'd like you to do is to effectively put together a report on whether or not the BRI is a good idea. Now your report needs to try and explain some of the social, economic, environmental and political impacts of the project. So by just considering those 4 elements, that very quickly gives you 4 key paragraphs to actually write about. The other thing I'd like you to consider are the different viewpoints, and you may want to bring this into the political side of things because it crosses over quite nicely. But who are the different stakeholders? Stakeholders are people that have an interest in the project, including both those and in China. What are their viewpoints about it? And then your final paragraph should be an opportunity for you to reach your own judgment. Do you think the BRI is a good idea? So those are the kinds of things I'd like you to try and include in your report. Now the next slide, I've given you a possible structure. So it gives you some sentence starters that you might want to include. So it's up to you. You don't need to stick to this layout, but it may be a way that you want to kind of help you get into how you're going to write. Okay? Have a good go at that. Pause the video and let's get cracking. Okay. The last thing you can do, and this is only probably really necessary if you're in a classroom situation, is to find out what other people think. Is the BRI a good idea or not? It would be interesting to know your thoughts. So why don't you ask the class or other people when you get back to school what their thoughts are on the BRI? Is it a good idea or not? And we'll leave it there for today. See you again soon.